Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards. Welcome to the season finale of InFocus. InFocus is a weekly program where we zoom in on what's happening within and throughout the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, your government. On today's program, we explore the vital work of the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development et al. In St. Kitts and Nevis, as the nation faces the challenges of climate change, environmental degradation, and the need for sustainable development. The ministry is at the forefront of protecting our natural resources and ensuring a resilient, thriving future for all citizens and residents. Now, from advancing climate adaptation strategies to fostering biodiversity conservation to promoting sustainable waste management, the ministry plays a key role in shaping St. Kitts and Nevis' transition into a sustainable island state. Joining us today is the minister responsible for the environment, climate action and sustainable development, the Honorable Joyelle Clarke, and Sherilita Shez Dore-Tyson, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sustainable Development. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
To InFocus, we are pleased to have you and to welcome also the Minister responsible for Sustainable Development, Climate Action, Environment, and a number of other ministries, the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clarke, and her Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Shez Tyson. Welcome to both of you ladies. Minister, of course, you've been here before, so welcome back to you. And Shez, I will have to say welcome for the first time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so there's a lot to get into, and we want to start with something that most persons may not necessarily pay too much attention to, although it is a national effort. It is something that is very important and sometimes persons resist it. It's the census. So let's start there. Now, of course, the census started back in 2022, earlier in the year, and then it was completed in April 2023. Where are we with the census as it stands?
Well, I am very pleased to inform that the census is officially completed. And we have presented Cabinet with our findings, and so now it is officially available to the public.
When was it completed?
It was completed in 2023, and we took it to Cabinet in June 2024. Mm-hmm. So it's now a public document.
Right. Where is it available? How can persons access it?
Well, we are going to put it on our webpage shortly. We can, you can also come to the ministry if you want to, because we have the information there, and we are going to distribute it very shortly to the public, because we realize that there's so much depth in the census, and so we are planning to have public consultations, public engagements, where we are saying, listen, this is what we have found, how can it benefit you? What can you do with this information? So we're going to partner with the Department of Constituency Empowerment, and we're going to have island-wide dissemination programs in 2025. Mm-hmm. We were planning to do it this year, but manpower challenges, shortcomings in terms of our budget, we were not able to do it this year, but definitely next year we are going to do that. Okay.
And Minister, of course, we would have heard the Prime Minister mention on several occasions about a declining birth rate. I think it was a shock for many persons in the country, considering the child in March. You said so many children. I imagine that those are some of the statistics that came available from the census.
Yes, so we're the community engagement is going to be critical for the ministry to share with different pockets what's happening, and there are different agencies who have particular keen interest in the census data. And yes, for us, we look and we say, oh, a lot of children in the match, but the birth rates are declining. And that's why the Prime Minister, as a former medical doctor, has encouraged us to have more children. We need it for economic development, to stimulate the economy a little bit more. And we can manage it because balancing a population with the resources, that's what you always have to do for development that meets the needs of everyone. And we're saying that according to our population census 2022, we can have some more babies here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Although some persons may argue with migration that, is there a need really to bring more persons in terms of migration statistics, persons coming in who can work? Is there enough space for everyone?
Of course.
There is. and I'll let Piers get into it more, but I'll say broadly that the world is, for centuries, the world has been moving. Kittians moved. And I grew up knowing my parents saying, we have family in the US Virgin Islands, we have family in Britain, we have family in the UK, in America. And it's because we're a mobile population. And now we're seeing persons move back to St. Kitts and claiming roots here in St. Kitts from the roots we set down, our forefathers set down before. And we have to develop around this reality. We cannot be xenophobic in any way, or xenophobic, however it's pronounced, in saying we don't want people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The CSME serves that purpose, in particular, free movement of people across the region with skills. Our people move, and so persons from other countries will move to St. Kitts and Nevis. And what's important for the Ministry of Sustainable Development, it's really having the services and facilities that can accommodate persons. Or you'll end up with slum cities, and we don't want that. But Piers can talk about that.
Yes, Piers, tell us a bit about some of the findings from the census, the key findings.
Okay, we found that our population in St. Kitts is 38,138. We have 18,580 males and 19,558 females. In Nevis, the population is 13,182, 6,420 males and 6,762 females. So we have a total population of 51,320, 25,000 males, 26,320 females. How many households do we have in St. Kitts? In St. Kitts, we have 16,143 households, and in Nevis, there are 5,534 households. So in all, total, we have 21,167 households. What's the average household size? Believe it or not, in reference to what the minister said earlier, the average household size in St. Kitts is 2.36.
Small.
And that is very alarming. While in Nevis, it's 2.38, which means each house has that number of persons on average.
Do you have statistics from the last census to give us a sort of a comparative analysis?
We have that, but I did not bring that, but we do have that. But we see a declining trend in terms of the household sizes. And I'm sure, I don't know if you're both, you're too young, but back in my day, my parents had 10 children. So you had larger households, but now you realize we're now down to 2.36. So it is a cause for concern, indeed.
Okay, Minister, how is the government using the data presented in the census now to shape policy?
Right, so what we can see from the census data is going to influence our boundaries in particular. It's very important that there are boundaries adjustments according to the population bubbles that we're seeing. We know that some boundaries, some constituencies are far too large, and so we have to make voting fair across St. Kitts and Nevis. Additionally, the population census is a direct indicator for the Ministry of Social Development in particular for the services that are required in some communities. We're seeing here the comparisons. I'm sorry that I can't present like the actual data, but we saw some constituencies saw an increase in housing, in actual houses or households in their constituency, whereas in some rural areas, St. Paul, St. John in particular, there was a stagnation in terms of housing development. And you can immediately look at that and see that no new homes were built, or the efforts of the previous administration to provide housing in that district wasn't as intense as in other areas, for like Trinity, for example. So it now says to us as a government that there is a need to refocus our efforts on providing housing solutions for rural populations, which are generally the populations that you see an increase in poverty levels. So if you're going to eradicate poverty, which is what we want to do, you have to provide persons with the amenities so that they can live better lives, clean homes, sanitation, etc. It speaks to the income levels. It speaks to a number of things that allows us to give direction to the Ministry of Social Development, the Department of Physical Planning and Lands and Surveys. Where do we need to open up new lands for construction? Where is the population growing? And importantly, how we treat with our urban centers. Keon, for example, we at the ministry, I'll let the PS talk about that, but our intention is to make Keon a legitimate urban center. And then we have to look at the suburban development in St. Peter's. A lot of our young population professionals are moving to St. Peter's, and we have to ensure that the transport network works, services are available, and that people would actually move to the rural area because the services are there. But if PS could just say a little bit more about our intentions for Keon as an urban area based on the census data would be helpful.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Minister. We have a department in the Ministry of Sustainable Development. It's the Department of Urban Resilience and Development. And that particular department deals with the towns. Of course, you know, St. George Bastille is our main core town, city, but we have Sandy Point and we have Keon as well. So this department, we are now saying, what do we need to do to develop these other towns? What do the people want? For example, in Keon is a key agricultural hub. And so the focus for Keon has to be on enhancing agrotourism. It has to be on supporting the local farmers with infrastructure improvements and in expanding the local markets. In Sandy Point, we are seeing the focus on cultural tourism and local business development. That's a very thriving area. So the planned improvements would include infrastructural investments to enhance the area's appeal to tourists and residents alike. You know, you see we have some areas that we need to work on in Sandy Point. So that's what we intend to do through the data, because we are data driven, right? So that's what we intend to do based on the data that we collected through the census, how to improve these other towns outside of Bastille. I guess we'll come to land, because I was going to mention that rural living is going to be our new trend, but we'll get there. I'll mention that at some point in the future.
Right, and Minister, I also wanted to touch on the fact that when it comes to seeking assistance from regional, international agencies, of course, there are groups out there that have projects that they would submit for funding, whether it be to do with the community or, of course, even to develop a business, because you must know where the market is. You must know how many persons are there, identify gaps, because it's not just necessarily persons as well too. It is the services that are available in the area. Is there a health clinic? Is there how many shops? Is there a supermarket? Is there a need for a supermarket? A person would have said that in St. Peter's, which of course the Prime Minister has identified and the census has shown, is one of the fastest growing communities, as you mentioned.
It is.
And so is there need for these things? That is where the information collated is very important.
Yes.
Precisely, and you hit the nail right on the head. We have to ensure, I mean, St. Kitts and Nevis has done really well in terms of our community-based health program and having a health facility almost in every parish and sometimes in every community. So health services, community health services are doing well. And that information was driven by the census data. The number of, how far you have to go to get diabetic care in particular. You don't need to go very far. In some communities, it's in your community. But in terms of other services that would attract a younger population, a more vibrant, dynamic population to some of our suburban areas, we have to look at the services that are available. And a key service is being able to go and get food, produce in your community.
Yes.
having banking services. So we're seeing the decentralization of some of those activities. If you drive across the Bore Road, you're going to see construction for a new banking, a new bank in that area. So between Molineux and Keon, you also have a gas station. So these services are critical to support population in that area. And again, our drive towards sustainability includes how we develop our lands, and we'll talk about the need for rural living, as was mentioned, very shortly.
Okay, and so the next census, it's done every 10 years?
Every 10 years, yes.
Right, okay, and so are there any plans right now, and I appreciate that it was just completed, but to get persons to be more forthcoming and sharing the information as they come to the census? You mentioned that there will be community engagements.
Yes.
I imagine that would be a part of it, having persons understand why a census is conducted and how they can cooperate more and get others to cooperate, because there are a lot of persons who are very skeptical. They feel that it's persons that are basically, as we use the colloquial term, minding my business. I don't want my business on the street.
Yes.
So there are strategies in there to help to break that and work on that now?
But we will definitely have to start some sort of community outreach education program when it comes to preparation for the census. And we won't wait until it's time. So as soon as we get this information out, we're going to start preparing for the next one, which is due in 2032. Right?
And as you know, Anne, the census was in 2022, and you know what was happening in 2022.
COVID.
It was an election year. It was just coming out of COVID. People were very apprehensive about sharing information because a lot of people don't want to be polled. So what would be enumerators going around asking for information, people would confuse that as somebody doing a political poll and not want to participate. So we understand why it took a while for the team to complete the census data collection efforts, and then even further for the team to complete the analysis. But I know the Department of Statistics has assured us that St. Kitts is by no means behind in the analysis of the 2022 census data in comparison with other countries. But we're very happy that we're at this point now where we can inform policy making, and we can actually have the census data to inform the upcoming budget, as well as inform the decision making about needed boundary changes.
Final question for census: at 51,320, is St. Kitts and Nevis underpopulated? And if we are there incentives that the government may seek to introduce to promote bigger families or stuff like that?
Well, I would leave the definition of underpopulated is very technical, is that you have more resources than your population, right? In a very technical way. So I wouldn't want to immediately say that we're underpopulated, but the technocrats can determine that, and then we'll give you the answer. What I would say is we can absorb more people in the population. We can support more services if we have more persons, and we do want to have St. Kitts and Nevis as a country that's welcome and open to our CARICOM residents or to returning nationals, expats, etc. So I won't say underpopulated. I would say we do encourage families to have families, however your family structure is. As you can see, it's just 2.23 average family. It's down from about 6. We would encourage persons to have children and we encourage persons to come here to St. Kitts to live and work for short stints. But we need more people in the population, and it's not only going to be done through natural regeneration.
Right, and I think that we can have an entire program on census. There are a lot of data that I think we need to drill down on. But unfortunately, there are a number of things that we have to get to, as mentioned. And one of the things, of course, would be the makeup of the family that we would like to touch on. But as we move on and sticking with the census theme, as you mentioned, in terms of land management. So we want to shift to land management now. What is the census showing in that respect?
Well, in terms of the data we have a young population, and young people are more land conscious than our seniors were back in the day. So now, I think we have over 2,224, that's the last number I checked when I left, new applicants on record. Now, for a 68 square mile island, that is quite a challenge to meet the needs of all of these people. As a matter of fact, if you realize 2,224, that's a town.
It is.
That's a new town.
It is.
So it's almost like a new community waiting to be established. And so the ministry had to find creative ways to ensure that land distribution is equitable, it's accessible, and we can do it in a fair way. And so we have a number of programs that we are currently running that guide how and who receive land. We are not discriminating, but clearly we can't just do it across the board like that. And so we have a number of programs, like for example, our young professionals program, that we are building the middle class. Again, this is based on statistics that we would have received. And so we are distributing to young professionals, persons who are ready to build, they're bankable. We are doing that. We have over 100 persons who have received land so far under that program. We have the military. They are showing interest as well. We have a number of persons from the military end, the police, the army. And so we are working as well with that group. I haven't said this yet to my minister, but I'm seeing a growing subset, which is the men. The men are coming forward and they're saying to me, PS, what happened to us? And these are the bus drivers, these are the construction workers, these are the men who are working on the street, these are the men who are working maybe in factories. And so now we realize we have to now pay attention to that subset. So in 2025, that is going to be one of our focus. So we have the young professionals, we have the military, we have women, because women carry the families. We are going to include men and some other subsets. So we can sort of spread it across as many aspects of the population as possible and as many demographics as possible.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, ministers, there were a number of, I would want to say, abnormalities that were discovered back in 2022 when you became minister in terms of land, and there was some controversy, and not to revisit the whole issue, so to speak. Of course, we're not here for that, but it's a matter of solving the issues that were there and moving forward to avoid them again. What's taking place in that respect?
Right, and I want to use this opportunity to really extend every opportunity I get, thanks to the PS and the team at the Ministry of Sustainable Development, because we've brought all the directors from every department together: statistics, PSIP, lands and surveys, GIS, urban development. Sit in a room, and the administrative lead, sit in a room, and let's really take a holistic look at what's happening, what happened, and what's happening with land, and what we want to do with land. And as much as possible, we have made a commitment to the nation to depoliticize the distribution of land, hence outlining the key sectors, subsets here who require land. Now, anytime you have to clean up a process, especially one that had 7 years of serious mismanagement, you have to clean up while you satisfy growing needs. And that has always been a challenge for the ministry, but the team is working really well, has worked extremely hard, put in extra hours to get this done. And because the census data is saying you need to open up new areas, that's what we're doing. We sat with the physical planning, presented the National Physical Development Plan, which showed the cabinet each constituency and how we intend to open new lands for housing development. Additionally, with the 2,000 plus applications and 68 square miles and needing 30% of our land to be protected, we have to go vertical. Yes. So the ministry, PS can talk a little bit more about that. That's the way that we're going to solve this increased demand for land. And persons want their homes. Persons want to establish their own families. Persons also want to establish a household within the yard space of the traditional family. So we have to look at all the ways in which we can provide support towards sustainability, because our SDGs speak to how people live and how you move people out of poverty, quality of life. And a critical part of having a high quality of life is not just the income that you need to take care of yourself and good food, but how you live and where you live and the services that are available. And that's why the ministry is also working very closely with the National Housing Corporation to ensure that once persons are approved for an NHC home, whichever program they are pushing, that we are providing the land for them to build that house, and working very closely with our data collectors in constituency empowerment to ensure that wherever we find let's say, a pocket of poverty or underservice, that we can transmit that to human settlement and say this should qualify for the sanitation, the program where we remove the pit latrines.
Okay, couple of quick questions that popped to mind when you were talking, and of course, one of them, as you mentioned, let's go with the use of land first. Now, there are persons who have land, and they have land for years and years and years and years, and they've not developed that. Persons would say that that is an issue because then for persons who intend to build and you have that empty lot next to them, it can cause an issue. The land is being underutilized. There are persons, of course, who would have gotten land who might have migrated overseas and they're not paying for their land. There are a number of issues that can come up there. How is the ministry tackling and use of land? Because if I get a piece of land today, is it mandatory? Can the government force you or try to encourage that you build within a certain, not necessarily build, but use the land, have the land do productive use within a certain aspect of time?
Well, actually, we are now working on our policy, a land policy. And that is something we are considering because we realize, as the writer said, people have land for donkey's years, but nothing is happening. And on the other hand, I have this demand for land. So it's like you're caught in the middle. And it's both domestic and also commercial, because remember we do commercial lands as well. Over the last 15 months, we open our doors on Thursday afternoons and we invite the public in, come in and let's address your land issues, come in. And what we find is that people come in with all sorts of land matters, even what we didn't plan for. But we allow the public to access us, right? And it has been going on for 15 months. And there's no Thursday afternoon we don't have a crowd. So I am thinking, I was thinking to cut it by the end of the year, but it seems as though I may have to go another extra month. In addition, what we want to add is the commercial land aspect, because we realize that a lot of businesses are coming in during that time, and that is what is sometimes I'm there up to 7 dealing with land matters on a Thursday. So if we put the commercial lands in the morning, which is what we plan to do, and then we do the residentials in the afternoon, so we can cope with the demands and solve many of the problems on hand at the time when the persons are there. So we're going to continue our program into 2025, solving the many errors that you pointed out before. It's still ongoing. Now, so far, we have given out over 600 letters, and so the response in terms of those persons who had 2022 challenges, especially those leading up to the election period. So we have taken the documents. Okay, you have 3 persons here. We put 2 somewhere. So we have solved over 600 of those. So those persons have gotten letters, and as a result, we are seeing an increase in the number of payments in the Treasury, especially with the Prime Minister's, the Prime Minister that we set, he mentioned a reset in 2020, when was it, 2023?
2023.
Yes, so we are seeing an increase in the number of persons who are now owning lands. As a matter of fact, just on my way here, I met a young lady who said, I just want to hug you. I said, oh, really? She said, yes, I got the call, my letter, and she was so excited. I'm like, really? But just to show you that people are now land aware of the benefits of owning land. And so what we want to do is to use this opportunity to encourage people. You have your land, pay for it. You have your land, build. Don't just have it just sitting down there, because the whole idea of distributing land is to encourage and to stimulate the economy, the construction economy. And that is something we are trying our very best to do. And so that's why we are supporting NAC, because you want to you don't want to leave out anyone. So you have the low income, you have the middle income, and of course you have the higher. So we are trying our very best to support the economy through land distribution, through professional, fair, honest, non-political inclined land distribution. So that's what we are doing in terms of that. But we're encouraging those people who have lands, please do something. The banks are ready. The banks call almost every day. I get a call. We are ready. We are the people. We are ready. Yes.
Right. And that speaks, Minister, as we speak about developing these new projects, then, is there going to be a change in policy whereby if there is an area designated and the first person has to build that, they have to pay to install a lamppost or
no.
have to pay to put in over? Is that still going to remain?
You meant to ask the PS that question.
Well, I realized something. I realized that the public doesn't know the procedure. And everybody's saying the same thing. And they say, oh, I'm planning to build, but I'm waiting on. I said, did you apply to SKNIS? That's the first thing you need to do. And so when you apply to SKNIS sends a message to the ministry, sends a letter that John Brown is ready to build in Molyneux Extension. And the ministry pays for the installation. That is how it's done, what people don't know. The ministry, government absorbs that cost because that is part of our land development plan. And so when SKNIS informs us, the work starts. The first person who gets land, well, what we start to do now is that we start to see how many people can benefit from every trend, every first installation. So, you know, to maximize our budget. And so we're encouraging people, don't let that rumor about you have to pay for something, don't let that stop you. Go to SKNIS, make the application, and SKNIS will inform the ministry and we will support you the best we can. Right?
Yeah, I think, sorry.
I was saying that is where the importance of proper communication comes in, especially having the land management Thursdays. All of those issues can be answered.
Yes.
I want to say to Ian that in even speaking with the former Minister of Lands, Sustainable Development, Dr. Douglas, when he served as Prime Minister, explained that the Special Land Initiative really was a way in which we could empower rural populations, in particular, with owning a piece of land. So the price that persons are paying for land right now, $8 in some areas, and I think $3.50.
It's $3 for government crown land. Average community is $3 per square foot for the first 4,000 square feet, and then $4 for the remaining.
And that in
a tiered system.
That in no way absorbs the cost of installing roads, installing utilities, water, and electricity. The Ministry of Sustainable bears that cost. So if we were to charge the actual cost of land, it would be about $25 to $30 so that you can get a paved road, electricity, and water. But that was not the intention. It was to empower. But now we are at a point where we have to readjust the cost of land so that we can meet those services, so that persons don't complain that they've lived on a project for 10 years without the road being paved because there is no payment to support that. It's absorbed by the government. However, to deal with this also, we are encouraging people to move to the rural area, to embrace rural living. I live in St. Paul's. I drive to St. Paul's every single night. It's 35 minutes when I'm in a good mood, 20 minutes when I'm late. And there is absolutely nothing that can compare to country breeze and the peace of being home, hearing the dog's back, looking at your breadfruit tree. And we're saying that rural living is a key part of our sustainability initiative. Everybody cannot live in town. There are no more lands in constituencies 1, 2, and 3. So no matter what, and every single day we get a text message, I want a piece of land where Dewport, Dewars, Crescent Hill, there are no more lands. Let's move to the country. But in doing so, we recognize that as a government, we have to make the services available. So we're going to have the supermarkets and the gas stations and the nightlife and the beaches and everything that you need to feel comfortable. And of course, the road is fully paved. So it is an easy drive to the country. So we want the nation to embrace the $3 lands that are available all over the countryside. And it's great for families, great for your health.
You mentioned earlier about going vertical, that is a practical solution to helping to meet the demand that's there. Comment a bit further on that. PS, you want to weigh in there?
Well, as I said, with such a demand and with our restrictions, because as the minister said, 30% of the land has to be reserved, right? So what is happening now is that we have basically run out of regular flat commercial residential lands. And so the areas we've identified, for example, in Sandy Point, you're going to find it's gently sloping. So everybody will not get an individual piece of land. So in other countries you go, you see like 4,000 people live in one building. That is where we will have to go to meet this demand, because we don't have enough land space. We don't have the capacity to give every single person who applies a piece of land. So we are going to have to go vertical living. We're building 4, 5, 6 floors, and we house families comfortably in one building. We see it in Cuba. We see it everywhere in the world that we travel. Yeah. So it's doable, it's workable, and it's been successful. So that's going to be our next venture.
And it's sustainable.
And it's sustainable as well.
That's what I was going to ask as well, in terms of the sustainability aspect of it. But before I get there, Minister, I want to touch on, we discussed persons getting land. But what about those who already have land, or should I say, were living on the land, but did not own the land? And that refers to the squatters. Of course, there are persons in 3 different areas, and I know St. Peter's was one, also St. Paul's, and there's another area. Talk to us a bit about what the government is doing with regards to that.
Okay, woo, great question, Ian. Thank you for that. So we're going to mash this question up because this is our feel-good moment. St. Kitts and Nevis doesn't have as serious a squatter challenge as some of the southern of the other countries in the Caribbean, and that's because we have really good control policies through the Development Planning Control Board. However, we do have a squatters challenge, and a historical one in Lagreed, Upper Monkey Hill, which is even, I think, much longer than Lagreed.
Yes. Over 100
and then
years
a recent one in Amsterdam. And we know that we have some other challenging squatters spots in Washgut in particular, and some in Lodgegut that we will deal with.
Yes.
But in terms of Lagreed, Upper Monkey Hill and Amsterdam, St. Paul's, we have been engaging with the community, and it has been such an enriching and enjoyable process to work with the community residents. Shift your fence so that we can make the road wide enough so that we can have emergency services. Let's see who lived here. Let's regularize the sizes of the lots, and the MPs in particular have been the biggest champions of ensuring that these persons have access to the land. Now, we don't want a squatter situation to develop, so we're not going to be entertaining new squatting settlements because we're dealing with all of the long established squatter spots, which means going forward, everyone has to come to the department to get your piece of land or go to NHC to get a house to be part of our vertical construction or be part of our rural living. But I'll let the PS explain more of how we did that and how we're going to be empowering persons in Lagreed, Upper Monkey Hill, and Amsterdam.
Okay, well, so those 3 areas identified, what we did, the persons have lived there for maybe generations. In St. Peter's, I think there was one case where a family lived on a particular piece of land for over 100 years. Grandfather, generations. And they never owned the land. And so what government is saying, listen, you've lived here, we are now going to give you the land, allow you to own the land at no cost. At no cost. Now, we've done all the technical work, we've done all the surveys, and it was just Monday I sent something to Cabinet requesting Cabinet's permission to now distribute these lands to these potential landowners, hopefully by the end of January. The minister is going to let me know if that was approved, and I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it was. She will let me know. But these persons now are going to become landowners. We have 181 persons in St. Peter's, 79 in Lagreed, and 27 in St. Paul's, Amsterdam. They are going to become landowners. They have lived there a long time. So they will get their certificates. This plot, number 163, is yours with your name on it. You now go ahead, whether they want to develop it, you want to build a house, whatever. You go and pass it on to the next generation. So it's no longer squatter. It is an official lot of land. And the government is doing that at no cost whatsoever to the landowners.
That gives a peace of mind to the persons that live in those houses.
Certainly.
It does. It does. It really does.
Yes, because, I mean, imagine you live on a piece of land, you can't use it at the bank. You want to build something, you can't go nowhere because you don't own the land. And that is what this program has done. It has empowered the potential landowners. So as I said, I'm just waiting for the final okay from my minister to say that Cabinet approved it on Monday, and then we're going to start planning for this.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to say too, that at no cost, but bearing in mind that the ministry has absorbed almost all of the costs associated with getting your land regularized. There is the cost associated with the transfer tax, and we're going to work as best as we can with the individual to ensure that that is paid. But having to absorb transfer tax facilities, the legal is going to take on all of the expenses around facilitating this process. I mean, it couldn't be a better New Year's gift for these persons.
Yes.
I mean, we're really working with communities, and this is what the ministry wants to do: work with communities for solutions for the communities.
And that is what we always say. The ministry, it is your ministry. Ministry of Sustainable Development is your ministry. It's not some ministry somewhere out there. It's the people's ministry. We are community oriented. We are people oriented. Now we have one challenge that I must mention, and the minister spoke about it, which is those persons who are living in the guts. We were very scared over the last couple of months, the rainy season. Thank God we didn't have any severe weather this year. But we are particularly concerned. We see the issue in St. Peter's, we're seeing it in Atlas, and we're seeing it in Keon. Where people are now squatting on the edge of the river. So we're just saying that you have to be very careful. It's not something we are going to encourage, and we are going to see what we can do to rectify the situation in 2025. Yeah. We don't want any loss of life in case the guts decide to you never know what's going to happen. So that is a challenge that we are facing, and that is a challenge that we are going to undertake and tackle in 2025.
And then, of course, with climate change.
Yes, exactly. We don't know what's going to happen.
And the good thing about these two ministries being sister ministries, the Ministry of Environment has already developed a full project that we're taking to potential donors and agencies to see how this could be an adaptation project to climate change. We understand that if you're living in very vulnerable areas like a gut, sometimes you have no choice but to relocate these persons to ensure they don't lose their livelihoods, to ensure that persons who have lived in spaces for 100 years maintain whatever familial ties they have with the land. We have to get funding, external funding for it. So we're working very closely with environment to ensure that this is done in a safe way.
How do you discourage persons who might be listening to this and say, wow, they get in their house and appreciate it's been done for generations, as you mentioned, that they've lived there, that they're getting it for free, and so maybe I need to go ahead and squat.
Right. Where's the camera?
That is it.
We will not be entertaining any more regularization for any new squatting. The ministry has processes already in place. Freehold license for persons who have lived in some communities for over 30 years on a plot of land. Come to the ministry, go to your lawyer, we can manage that process. For the 3 existing communities, and I think there's just one more, the pasture saddlers, which is not really even squatting anymore because people live there and have been paying rent and so forth. Those are the communities that we're managing, but every other area where there is illegal squatting, you will be moved.
Right. Okay, Minister, as we talk about persons living in houses, of course, around Bastion and the countryside entirely, there are a number of residences that are unoccupied. They've been abandoned for whatever reasons. Is there a plan to seek to revitalize those areas? Is there a plan to reclaim the homes? Of course, there is a number of challenges that it would pose in terms of legal, but the government, of course, it's an ISO. Everyone talks about them, and certainly as we seek to build out our tourism industry even more, and you go on these tours and you see these houses where grass is growing in them.
Yes, and that's Thursday. Tune into Parliament, and you're going to hear the debate, the Community Beautification and Safety Act, that the Ministry of Sustainable Environment, we have been reviewing with the Attorney General's office for the past 7 months. We had the first reading, I think, in March or May, and we're going to debate that bill on Thursday, and that bill in particular deals with this challenge. It's not just a beautification issue. Yes, we have tourists visiting. We want to present St. Kitts well. It's a health issue, and then it's a crime and national security issue, because we do have cases where persons are hiding illegal drugs and weapons in these abandoned lots. I myself, I'm surrounded in some cases by lots that are abandoned, and you have the rodents, you have the extreme cases of mosquito and so forth, and you have the Department of Health that's doing its work on environmental health. But to support them, to support the Ministry of Tourism, and to support the need for urban revitalization, which is something that the MP for Constituency 2, the Honorable Marsha Henderson, has been working very closely with our ministry to regenerate and revitalize some of the urban spaces in Bastion, because people build really good homes next to an abandoned lot. It devalues devalues your
Devalues the
property.
property.
And then you have, I don't want to say vagrants, but some homeless persons who are occupying and keeping them in really poor taste. That is something that we're going to be debating. And it really supports the work of the Parks and Beaches unit in particular, and those who are assigned to STEP who work in the inner communities to clean these empty lots. We want St. Kitts and Nevis to be healthy, to be safe, to be clean, and for more reasons than one. So we really do look forward to the support from everyone in Parliament. This is a non-controversial bill. This is for our safety, our health, and it's going to help us to deal with this case. And the Urban Development Unit is also presenting plans, and I think the Development Control Planning Board working together to see how we can develop, acquire some of these lots and develop either housing for young professionals, lease opportunities, social housing. So there is a multitude of options that we're exploring to deal with this. I would say, though, that it is not a situation that is unique to St. Kitts and Nevis. All across the Caribbean, you have areas where persons migrate and move out of a community, and then it's abandoned. So we want to deal with it in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are aware that the family issues about who owns a piece of land has to be taken into consideration. The government is not just going to go and take a piece of land from you, but there is a process that will dictate that you must keep the property clean, you must do something with it, or the government reserves the right to do ABCD with your consent.
And speaking of clean, Minister, of course, the ministry traditionally has had a national community cleanse that takes place in December. Tell us a bit about a committee that is taking place, a national community cleanse committee that has been formed, and also talk to us about the initiative that is taking place this year.
Okay, definitely. I'm so happy to talk about this. And I want to start with an example, which is the Independence Square. Can I?
Yes, and just for persons who are looking at this live on television or looking at the replay, there's some pictures that we have that we can show on the screen while you're talking about that.
Thank you so much. So I think just last week I sent a PS a very strong text like, what's happening here? This is a problem, because Minister Henderson, as the Minister of Tourism, she sent some messages. Person saying, look at the square, garbage, the food is rotten, etc. And I was like, how is this happening in the height of the tourist season? So PS said, we're doing everything. She'll explain all that we're doing. If you see here, this one, these are boxes. Nobody went to the square with a TV box. It is obvious that the businesses around the square have deposited these in the night. And so we decided we're going to do an experiment. This is overnight garbage that was left. We removed the garbage. The next day, the garbage came back. Again, we removed the bins to the inside of this square. The next day, the garbage came back. We took the bins completely out of this square. And this is what you're seeing. Businesses are still taking their garbage and depositing it at the locations where the bins were. Now, sustainability, it is not a government vision. It has to be a national vision. And the Solid Waste Management Corporation, Parks and Beaches and Urban Development is doing a lot of work to keep this square clean. But if the people who use this square don't work with us, we're going to have a problem. But let's talk about what we're doing in the square from urban development to ensure that it's a safe and clean space.
Okay. Now we have a capital project. It's been going on for the last 2 years, and it's going to go into 2025, where we are improving the square. As you can see, we have put down some concrete benches and tables. And let me just mention, someone is using the darkness of the night to unscrew, because they want to take the benches. There's someone is trying to steal the concrete benches out of the square. And so it's countering what we are trying to do. This is to make the square a comfortable place. You can just go and take a breathe off. You had a full day. You can go to the square. So we have to encourage our people to please help us to look after the square. We are fixing the railings. We are painting the railings. We are dealing with the garbage. We are dealing with the fountain. We are doing everything possible under this capital project to fix the square and improve the aesthetics of the square. But as the minister said, it's really becoming a challenge. I mean, you look at the photos and it's embarrassing.
It is.
You clean it today, and and then you get a call. Oh, the square is dirty. It's not.
It's problematic.
Especially given the historical importance
Yes,
of
the
square.
significance of the square.
That is what's most alarming. Now, yesterday, I walk through the square every single day. And yesterday I walked through the square, and what did I see? Tourists sitting around, because we had recently cleaned it. Tourists taking pictures, walking around, taking a breather. Workers from the vicinity sitting, having their lunch. Now, if you have your lunch and there is no bin, walk with your garbage. Don't leave your KFC box. Don't leave your KFC box on the bench. If you closed your store, don't bring your shoe boxes to the square. And what I'm saying now, I'm very passionate about it because Solid Waste Management Corporation ticketed one of the business owners, and we have 3 more to ticket. It's $500 per ticket, but when we do our legislative reform for solid waste, we're going to increase those fines to $5,000. It is not so difficult for you as a business owner around the square to hire your own garbage disposal facility. Give a man a work, but don't bring your garbage from your office and your business and your store to the square. And then you're going to complain that St. Kitts isn't beautiful, or how could we have the place like this when it's tourist season? We're undoing what we need to do to support tourism-based livelihoods. Nobody, you know what the first thing people say about St. Kitts? Oh, it's beautiful, it's so clean. But how could it be so beautiful and so clean if a central part of Bastille is littered, not just by the persons who go and take the breathe off in the square to eat, but by the businesses around? It's wrong. It's unfortunate, and we're calling it out today. We want your partnership.
Yes.
We want your partnership, and we don't want to give the Parks and Beaches unit and the Urban Development unit and the Solid Waste Management team that has to collect the garbage there extra work because you refuse to just dispose of your garbage properly.
You mentioned excuse me, that would be the Solid Waste Management Corporation. There's going to be some legislative reforms possibly. Timeline for that, next year you're looking at?
Right, so we're going to get, no, it's within the year. Next year we're going to start the process because solid waste and sustainable, we spend a lot of time in court, you know, and people don't know this. God, the PS goes to court regularly. We have fines, the garbage, there are persons who would not move their vehicle. And if the garbage truck needs to collect garbage on a road, they won't move their vehicle, and the vehicle scratch and we end up in court. Or persons who are so rude and aggressive to our landfill operators, like why? Our sanitation workers. So we are always in court, but we recognize that legislative reform is needed to support the sustainability agenda around keeping St. Kitts clean, and we're going to do it.
All right, Minister, there is about 8 minutes left, if you would believe. Talk to us a bit about the Christmas campaign. Is that happening again this year?
So everybody's asking, you know, every people calling the ministry and asking, when are you coming?
Well, I wonder if I should say this. The Christmas campaign, it's a $500,000 investment that we make between the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Environment, Constituency, Empowerment. And the man hours is about, we have almost 400 persons working on this. Parks and Beaches, STEP, Elevate, Urban Development, GIS, doing all the mapping. It's very expensive. However, it is something that was envisioned by the Prime Minister, that we establish a coordinating committee for keeping the community clean, and we established this in partnership with the police, the security forces, environmental health, GIS does work, urban development, STEP, Parks and Beaches, everybody comes together. And this year, we are hoping that we're going to do that. But of course, we can't always expend $500,000 to do this. So we want partnerships, and we're going to ask the business community to come on board and support our efforts. We're going to put the bins down. Solid Waste does that for completely free. I mean, the monies that are expended to keep St. Kitts clean and do this cleanse, it's one thing, but the community support that comes with it, it's something that could bring you to tears when you see these young persons. I think last year on Christmas Day, the truckers were driving around collecting the white goods, the old fridge, etc. And it really reminds people that there's more that brings us together than separates us. And the Christmas spirit, it's about doing for others. old people, when you go to their homes, the men send the videos and they say, you know, we just cleaned this home and removed this, and, you know, we're going to purchase something else for them because, you know, it's really good. And as expensive as it is, it does wonders for the community, for the Christmas spirit, and for your health. So we're hoping that we can do it this year with more resources provided by the private sector to offset the cost, and that it becomes something that community groups and NGOs can do in partnership with our ministry. It's needed, but it's expensive.
And ultimately, persons must take more responsibility and just keep the place clean at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it is. I mean, yesterday when I was speaking with the Prime Minister, he was like, no, we you know, explain to the nation how critical it is for a community to be clean, and seek their support, seek their partnership, and that's what we're doing, because when he said so 2 years ago, we took on the mandate, and we're here, and we really want to keep this going as an annual event.
5 minutes left. 5 minutes left, Minister. We have to touch on the single-use plastic ban.
Yes.
That, of course, comes into force next year.
Yes, December 31st is the last day for importation of single-use T-shirt plastic bags, and by March 31st, I hope I'm quoting the days correctly, it would be the ban on distribution. Now, the ministry has worked tremendously hard and very close with Customs and Excise, with Mr. Cosbert Woods, our UN resident coordinator, and with the Chamber of Industry to really speak with our major business operators about this ban. And yes, with every ban, there will be a request for adjustments, for alteration. But what Cabinet is approving is the concessions that would come with suitable alternatives to plastic bags. And yes, there is a call for biodegradable alternatives, but we do understand that there are also some technical challenges with biodegradable alternatives, which biodegradable plastic alternatives. So we want to transition to paper alternatives. It is critical for the circular economy. I mean, just this morning, I was listening to a news article about all the turtles that had plastic waste trapped around the lungs, their flippers, etc. But you would hear the Prime Minister also talk about the microplastics that we digest that are linked directly to cancers and diseases. So we have to do it. And some naysayers would be like, oh, that's an international cause. That is not an international cause. That is a cause for public health, for us. I want people to go over to the landfill and see the cells or mountains of single-use plastic bottles that we have collected over the past year with the help of the Ministry of Education. And it would shock people to know that so much plastic is in St. Kitts, and we have to deal with it. So yes, the ban is coming. We're going to announce during our budget period what the concessions would be, what the tax concession program would be for the nation. We're going to work very closely with our small businesses so that they don't transfer the cost to the consumer, and we're going to provide as much incentives as needed for them, and we're going to work with the local plastic producers, Montserrat Plastics, so that they too transition their plastic production from what is a single-use plastic to more biodegradable alternatives. But the ban is coming, and it's been a year of consultation with the key players, and we are ready. And we're going to be ready for it.
And Ambassador Larry Vaughan, who heads the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit, was here a few weeks ago on InFocus, and he spoke a bit about some of the opportunities that are available for persons in the diaspora to help to contribute to this initiative.
Yeah, and that's the thing. St. Kitts isn't just the 68 square miles. It's the 51,000 people here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and 100+ thousands that all over the world that can contribute. And this transition gives all of our entrepreneurs and creatives an opportunity to design their own reusable bags, their own craft bags options that people can use. So, I mean, the rest, if you go to some of the supermarkets, you're seeing them put out their reusable bag options. So it's not going to be like a shock to your system, because we announced this in May and we're getting people ready, and where needed we're gonna make some adjustments so that the private sector is on board with us. And I mean, persons have to get ready to pay for a plastic bag if they want it, and that's entirely up to the Chamber of Industry and Commerce to decide if their membership would charge 50 cents or $1, 10 cents for a plastic bag. But that's what we do when we go shopping. When we go in Walmart, we pay for our bags. So we're going to do the same here to protect our environment.
And of course, as you mentioned, there are a number of alternatives available. Cloth bags, these are things that were used back in the day. No reason that they can't come back now.
Exactly.
And that will help with branding as well for the stores.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Minister and PS Dore-Tyson, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us on this edition of InFocus. It's the final episode. I trust that you would have enjoyed our time with us during this year, and we look forward to welcoming you back. As mentioned, there's so much more things that we can drill down in terms of the census, and also talk about the path to sustainable environment. Of course, as we mentioned, the ministry is key in terms of driving that sustainable island state agenda, and we certainly will need to have a bit more focus on that in the coming year.
Definitely. Thank you for having us as your final guest. I mean, it says a lot when we do the last episode. I know our ministry is good. As Pia said, it's the people's ministry, and it's all about sustainable island state. We're using our national development planning framework to do that. We want to transition, and transition has everything to do with land, with plastics, with keeping the environment clean, with the community cleanse. We're doing it together. So
and we
thank
look forward to hearing now the announcement from the Prime Minister when budget will be held in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for this episode and over the past year as well. We trust that you will join us in the new year. As promised, I know I mentioned it a few times, but we weren't able to get to the calls, but in the next year, we certainly will do that. In the meantime, we'd like to wish you a productive carnival and Christmas season, and we wish you all the best here from the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service. Be safe. I'm Ian Richards.
Thank you.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.